welcome to the Filmjoint Premiere interview with the jury. It's really exciting to have you as one of our juries.
Thank you.
What was your take when you got the invite to be on jury? Why did you accept us?
I think it was humbling first and foremost. Definitely, it was very humbling to be picked for a jury member. But at the same time, it's been like a conscious effort on my part to like give back. I'd been through a phase of, complaining, this is what is wrong, making observations and all that. And, that now, it morphed into, so what do you want? What are the solutions? What are your concerns about cinema and the way the approach is here? And that equally led me to do more research, teach, which I currently do now, and getting an opportunity to be a jury member in a film festival run by a student that is an alumni. It just seemed like, yeah, go for it. So yeah.
So this is like your way of encouraging us to.
Yeah, this is my way of saying I support you guys, and it can only get better.
Please, can we get to know you?
My name is Daniel Oriahi. I'm a Nigerian filmmaker. I come from Delta State, but I grew up in Edo State. I always knew from like 13 I wanted to be a filmmaker, but stereotypical country and all that. So I studied economics first degree. But after my first degree, I went to film school. I went to film school in Jos, National Film Institute Jos, where I did motion picture production. I did a diploma course, which was like 2 years. After that, I came to Lagos. I did a screenwriting course with Pan-African University. And that was for a while before I ventured into making my first feature film in 2013. It wasn't good. But no, it was actually. I think looking back at it, like it opened doors because I knew as a filmmaker, like you needed to make stuff.
Yes.
If you say you want to be a director and all that, like you need to make stuff. You need to write it. You need to shoot it. You need to go for it. And at the time, I felt like, I needed to do short films. I'd done a lot of short films in film school and all that. And I saw what they did, to get me the opportunity. But I knew at that point in 2013 that I had to make a feature. So I made the first feature in 2013, did some traveling with it, got some jobs with it. And I've been trying to do films since then. Fortunately, I've done a lot of feature films, not a lot per se, but some that have gone to film festivals, cinema. There was a period I did a lot of TV movies because I needed a job, but at the same time I wanted to understand the rigors of like constantly shooting, and I felt rather than do TV, film, because TV kind of puts you in a contained box in terms of aesthetics, So I felt TV movies would be a better place for me to like really explore how I want to express myself. And I think I've just been on that journey of what kind of filmmaker am I now? And that's the phase I'm in. So I'm teaching film, but at the same time, I'm beginning to discover the kind of filmmaker I am, the kind of stories I want to tell, and stuff like that.
What kind of stories do you like to tell?
So because of my own experience growing up, I'm very drawn to trauma. I'm very drawn to mental disorder. I'm very drawn to the psychological. And interestingly, all the films that I've done that have, kind of gotten recognition have kind of focused on sub-themes of mental disorder, psychological trauma, and the rest. And I just feel like it's like that's my language. I know how to speak that language. And yeah, so of recent, it's been clearer. And I just finished a feature film which was equally on that psychological horror narrative, and it was a very fulfilling experience for me. So yeah.
Okay, so there was something you said about short films, because when I finished film school, I also thought that it was nice to get my hand busy. And so a lot of filmmakers, young filmmakers, are quite into, okay, let me just keep doing something, and so a lot of them tend to do short films. What's your take on short films? Short
films for me is like, it's like that calling card that if you say you're a filmmaker, so the next question is, what have you done? It's not about it's not about what institution you went to, stuff like that. It's like, what have you been part of? What have you done? And it's a safe place to start, because, the whole concept of filmmaking is capital intensive. And it's a place where you kind of find your voice, find what appeals to you, and you learn a lot about the craft of filmmaking, because the craft of filmmaking is not something you acquire, you can exhibit in a very short period of time. There's a technicality to it, yes. There's equally the process and the approach to filmmaking. Yeah. That's another thing that it takes years to develop, years to like really perfect. Yeah. And the concept of short films, you know, gives you that opportunity to, you know, try your hands and get into the nitty-gritty of it and understand it, and equally realize how, you know, very, very complex it is to be a filmmaker. I think that's why you need to start with short films, because if you jump into a feature film, there's a tendency that you will get burnt, and it could be very discouraging. And whereby, you know, you attempt something and you look at it and you're like, this is not what, and now you spent a lot of money down. And it has always been the case. So one of my favorite Nigerian filmmakers, he made short films for 10 years. Yeah, before he ventured into a feature film. So, and his films really stand out, you know, because he's had time to really like master the craft, understand the kind of films he wants to tell, and how to articulate it visually. And it takes time. Is that a cue for you, for us young filmmakers to understand that you don't need to make a feature before you can? I don't think you need to make a feature film. I think at some point you would know you need to make a feature film, because you have to get, because there's the economics of it. Like my friend who I said did 10 years of short films, he has other means of livelihood, so to speak, and you know that can weigh, you know, his lifestyle, you know, that can support his lifestyle. But for a lot of us in this part of the world that, you know, we are struggling, we are disadvantaged, so to speak, you know, you can't make short films for 10 years, you know what I mean? But it's only economical to start with a short film than a feature film. But at some point, you would have to make that quick transition from short to feature. You know, it might not have to take you 10 years. It might take you, yeah, whatever amount of years, but not necessarily a decade, you know. But yeah. Okay, so when you were going to screen the 10 films that you accessed, what were your thoughts? To be sincere, I wasn't expecting much. This is me just being honest. Why? I think maybe it's where I am, my headspace at the moment, and what I call film. The kind of films that I gravitate to and the kind of styles of storytelling. And I just feel like, or I just felt like, okay, a lot of people, young people, they're more drawn to mainstream kind of narrative style. So I wasn't expecting that I would be mesmerized by the selection, because what intrigued me was, you know, the genres were unique, the style and approach, they were unique, you know, so they were, every film you saw was different from the other one. Do you understand what I mean? And I was like, I liked the curation to get to this 10. So that just kept me up, and I had to see everything. So that means we did a good job. Yeah, in terms of curation of the 10 shots, they were really good selections, in my opinion. Yeah. And so which one spoke to you the most of the 10? The internet cannot be undefeated. I thought for me, it was hilarious. I liked the idea of it. I liked the subtext of it. I felt like that is somebody who is very aware of where we are and turned it into a very kind of, so it's kind of like a horror genre as well, you know, so it's a hybrid of so many things. So I was just very impressed with how the filmmaker did that, and it was quirky. I like quirky stuff and stuff. Okay. But that doesn't take the rest, you know, that doesn't put the rest, because every film, like I said, had a very distinct, unique thing about each and every one of them. Even the Nigerian entries, which for me, I was quite... That was actually going to be my next question. Okay. What were your thoughts about the Nigerian entries? I really liked the one about child trafficking. Oh, okay. Yeah, I liked the perspective, you know, you could tell that it was a filmmaker. I liked how the filmmaker worked with a style, a visual style, and how there was this mise-en-scène with not just the style, but performance, you know, and how all the secondary characters So I was like, I really like this filmmaker because you could tell that the people he worked with were not necessarily professional actors, but they were able to convey what they were conveying. They were interacting with the camera in a very, in a very fluid and natural way that it was like, yeah, this is good direction. You know what I mean? And I feel like, I don't know, I can't remember now, but I feel the director DP'd as well, if I'm correct. So it's just interesting to see how the resilience of a filmmaker to take on that kind of style, direct people who are not necessarily actors for such a subject matter, and really convey it in a short amount of time impressively well.
Were there like things you were looking out to see in the 10 films that you didn't see?
That I did not see.
Yes.
I wasn't necessarily looking for anything. So for me, first of all, is...
Or that you would have loved to see that wasn't present?
Maybe science fiction.
Okay.
Maybe science fiction. I think science fiction is a genre that we don't necessarily explore here.
Okay.
But science fiction is the way of the future. You know what I mean? Like, it's the way of how people seeing the future, how they seeing themselves and humanity interact with futurism and technology and all that, especially from an African perspective. So I was hoping that we would have one film that would speak about something that is not necessarily contemporary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But besides that, no, I was impressed.
Okay. So among the top 5 films that have now been selected, which is your best?
Can you just run down the titles again for the 5?
If Not Freedom, Traffic Me, Baghdad Graphics, Bugs Bunny, 3:15 a.m.
3:15 a.m.
I
I think because
I intentionally left it as a last.
yeah, 3:15 a.m. because it's my genre, it's my style. I loved the twist at the end. I loved the twist at the end. I felt it was very impressive storytelling.
What 3 things stand out from that 3:15 that you advise other filmmakers to put in mind when they're...
Okay, so I feel like, for a short film, the things that stood out for me was the use of space.
Okay.
How that was used. I felt that was really commendable. Performance. That was a film that didn't rely on any dialogue whatsoever, if I'm correct.
Yeah.
And you could see how the story was conveyed by just one character for that duration of time, And the third thing is people always seem to neglect the power of sound. And that's a film that would rely heavily on sound design. So when you look at those 3 things, I feel like filmmakers need to be aware that this concept, what we do, is an audiovisual. It's not just a visual medium, it's an audiovisual. So it's like how do you use sound and pictures to tell a story, And I think, yeah, and I feel like that particular short film was like, it used its elements. If I may just say a quick second, I think the quick second would be, I think If Not Freedom, which was the first and the longest, 20 minutes. And the 20 minutes just ran by, like, you wouldn't even notice that it was a short film of 20 minutes. And that's one that relied heavily on music to tell its narrative and performance. And I think, like, we as filmmakers, we need to be aware of how sound and music, that's the intricacy of filmmaking. It borrows from, it marries all the other artistic expressions to express itself. So it's important for filmmakers to understand how all these other art mediums come together to manifest in filmmaking.
When we started, you said something along the lines of you weren't expecting much from the films you're going to watch. And I believe there would have been a reason for that. So when you think about the reasons, what do you think we as young filmmakers should take away? Like, what should we pay attention to when we're trying to put together these short films? Because they could actually be a reason for you to be picked up for a feature. I think sometimes we don't put that into consideration. So what do you think we should pay attention to?
I think it's the versatility in storytelling. And how do I mean? Like, even the one about Baghdad, right? So it's like, how do you interact other mediums to tell story through film, right? And I feel like filmmakers just need to embrace other forms of artistic expression. and constantly devise how they can marry them together in interpreting their stories for film. I think it's one thing that, and you can get that challenge by watching films from other parts of the world and see how they are doing that. And that's why like the Baghdad one stands out for me, because it's about a graphic artist and you're seeing how they are relating graphic arts with, you know, with storytelling, with documentary.
Yeah.
You see If Cry Freedom,
If not freedom.
If Not Freedom, whereby we are using music to convey the whole narrative and all that. Like, it's not your mainstream. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But the thing about such is that people will be amused by how you are telling stories and fusing other mediums in expressing yourself as a filmmaker.
Okay, so what advice do you have for young short filmmakers? What should they pay attention to? What should they...
I don't think there should be any category first of short film or feature film, just young filmmakers, right? And I think what is important is, first and foremost, you have to love films, right? And let's not lie, we are not working all the time. We don't have 9-to-5 jobs, right? But we do have like a lifetime job. And our lifetime job is to soak in as much film and art as possible. So if you are not working and you're not on set, you should be consuming art. You know, you should be consuming film work, you should be consuming music, you should be consuming information on artists and arts and all that. So I feel like every young filmmaker needs to consume art. And if they are consuming art, it would naturally flow into the way they express themselves as filmmakers. Because besides film being a commercial venture and a kind of escapist medium for most people that watch films, it is an art. You know, and my biggest worry, concern, and that's why I started teaching, because I realized that a lot of people who were getting access to making films didn't necessarily appreciate art. So I became kind of obsessed with trying to show people.
When you say art, can you be more...
Art has been existing since the dawn of time, and art has always been communicating the human experience. Even from the first paintings of animals in caves and all that, people were drawing what their experience was, their hunting, their stuff like that. So art is a reflection of the human condition, right? And it can be through music, it can be through poetry, it could be through literature, it could be through visual and whatever you have. So I feel like if you are a humanist, if you are humanistic in nature, which a filmmaker should be, you appreciate life, you appreciate the experience of being a human, you know, you should equally consume art, you know, because by consuming art, you are getting more knowledge about the experience of being a human. And once you are consuming art and you're getting that understanding, you are using that as well in the way you express yourself as an artist. So people from around the world, not just one region, understand and can articulate and can appreciate your language of storytelling.
So what is something you want to leave people with in terms of your film? If you were to leave the world today, and we're going to all leave well, we're all going to leave here someday, what is something you want people to remember you by in terms of your work and all of those kinds of things?
That's a good question. So I was talking to somebody recently and I said, probably because my upbringing, I was made to feel like a misfit. And the only time that I felt I was okay, I felt I was normal, was when I saw movies that kind of reflected my situation in one way or the other, you know. And I feel like my films have always touched on it, that it's okay to be abnormal. It's okay to be different. And you can try regardless, you know. And interestingly, my first feature film is titled Misfit. And it's basically about somebody who is dealing with a lot of emotional trauma and is forced to confront those her past, you know. And I feel like that's what I want my films to do, that people who have been seen as invalids, misfits, and they haven't fit into society or have made mistakes, voluntarily or not, that it's okay for you to find your way back. It's okay for you to have scars, you know, and heal and still carry them like confidently and say, these are my scars, and that's what it is. I think for me, that is what I feel I want to say with my films, that the human condition is still, it's still valid if you're invalid. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah, that it's not, everybody's not perfect. There's nobody that is
There's
perfect.
no perfect person.
You know what I mean? But you know how society builds that thing around us, like, this is an ideal person. This is what an ideal situation is. And living in this social media era now where people can make edits and just post their good parts, fun times. And you're just like, gosh, I want that. You know, people should equally understand that, yeah, it's not like that all the time, and it's okay.
Would you say that films can help people heal from trauma?
Yes.
Okay.
I think they can. I think it helped me. I think it helped me. I think going into film and making films was my way of therapy from my own past. You know, so it can do things for you, the filmmaker. It can do things for people watching. You know, and I don't think the filmmaker's goal is to say, this is what I'm going to do, and this is what it's going to do to people or for people. You can't, because it's always a subjective viewing experience.
Of course.
It's not objective.
Yeah.
So what you have to really be focused on is, what do you want for yourself when you make this film? So for me, filmmaking is like therapy. Teaching is like therapy. Teaching is, okay, you don't like the system. Okay, so what are you doing to change the system? Okay, I am teaching people. Do you know what I mean? I'm not sitting down in one corner and complaining.
Yes,
I'm being part of the change in my little way, you know, so yeah.
What was your last, something final that you would like people listening to?
I have a film coming out. I have a feature film. It's called The Weekend. I'm very proud of the work. It's a psychological horror. It should come out sometime this year. It's in post-production at the moment. I equally have another project I've been working on for 4 years officially, but actually 7 years unofficial. It's called Black Custodian. It's a very, very personal work, and it's getting somewhere now. It's getting somewhere. So I'm just hoping that people get to see my work, especially like this new generation. I feel, okay, so another thing I feel is, I think film is on the decline. I feel film is on the decline.
Why do you think that?
Because the mode of experiencing it has been so democratized that it has become, and not just it, it's just like where we are in society. Like, we're always on our phone. There's so much information that is like right in front of our eyes that we don't even have the patience anymore to settle down and watch something for 2 hours without distraction, right? So I personally feel like it's important that filmmakers are aware of this reality. And being aware of this reality is even a bigger challenge, because it's now like, how can I really tell my story in a very short amount of time? So you see that it goes back to that concept of short films, that the short films you are making might just be what people would want to see now.
In the future?
Yeah.
Like
not,
in the future?
Yeah, that they would just be like, I'd rather watch a 5-minute short, get everything I want, great, than sit down 2 hours and watch a film. Yeah.